Hi guys, close your eyes for a little while, and imagine that the night has become very quiet. The sounds of the present slowly drift away, like footprints disappearing beneath soft desert sand. The air grows warm but gentle. A light breeze moves across a wide river that has flowed through the land for countless generations. Somewhere far away, reeds whisper against one another. Small waves touch the muddy banks with slow and patient rhythm. It is long before sunrise in ancient Egypt. Most homes are still dark. Families sleep closely together beneath simple woven blankets. The thick mud brick walls hold onto a little of the coolness gathered during the night. Outside, the stars still shine over the wide valley, stretching from one horizon to the other without interruption. They have watched over this land every evening, just as they will tonight. Life here follows quiet patterns that almost never hurry. The river decides much of the day. The seasons decide the work. The rising sun decides when people wake. Long before kings become stories carved into stone, ordinary people are already beginning another familiar morning. Tonight, we are not walking through the halls of great temples or standing beside towering monuments. Those places exist, of course, but they are only part of Egypt's story. Instead, we will spend our time among the people whose names have mostly disappeared. Farmers whose hands became rough from turning wet soil. Bakers who rose before dawn every single morning. Fishermen waiting patiently beside quiet water. Builders carrying heavy stone beneath the burning sun. Scribes sitting carefully with smooth sheets of papyrus. Mothers grinding grain while children played in dusty courtyards. These were the people who filled the villages along the Nile. Their lives were not grand. They were steady. Each day unfolded much like the one before it, shaped by simple routines that had been passed from one generation to the next. If you had quietly entered one of these villages before sunrise, you would first notice the silence. Not complete silence. Rather, the peaceful kind that belongs only to places where nearly everyone is still asleep. A dog shifts somewhere outside. A donkey breathes slowly beside a wooden fence. The river continues its endless conversation with the shore. Then, almost unnoticed, one small light appears. Inside a modest home, someone has awakened. A tiny oil lamp begins to glow against smooth mud walls. Its flame is small enough that it barely reaches the corners of the room, yet it is enough to begin another day. The woman of the household often rises first. She moves quietly so that younger children may continue sleeping for a little longer. Bare feet touch the cool packed earth floor. Her hands already know exactly where every tool rests without needing much light. Near one wall stands a grinding stone. Beside it waits a basket filled with grain gathered from previous harvests. Before bread can be baked, flour must be made. This work cannot be hurried. She kneels before the stone and begins to move the heavy hand grinder forward and back. Again. And again. And again. The sound is soft. Stone rubbing against grain. A rhythm repeated thousands of mornings across Egypt. It is patient work. Dust from crushed grain slowly gathers beneath her hands. Tiny pieces of wheat become finer with every movement until they resemble pale powder. Outside, the eastern horizon begins to change. The stars slowly fade. The darkest blue of night becomes softer. Birds hidden among reeds begin calling to one another. Soon more homes awaken. One lamp. Then another. Then another. Smoke rises gently through rooftop openings as cooking fires begin their daily work. The smell of fresh bread gradually spreads through narrow village paths. It is one of the oldest familiar scents in this place. Warm. Comforting. Simple. Bread is more than food. It is the center of nearly every meal. Without bread, the day would feel incomplete. Dough is mixed by practiced hands. Water from the Nile is added little by little. Sometimes a pinch of salt. Sometimes other grains. Nothing is wasted. Every handful matters. Nearby, another family begins preparing beer. To many people today, beer may sound like something meant for celebration, but in ancient Egypt it was part of everyday life. It was thick, nourishing, and often safer to drink than standing water. Even children sometimes drank weaker versions prepared for families. The brewing begins early. Warm grain. Water. Time. Everything moves according to familiar habits learned from parents and grandparents. Outside the village, faint shapes begin moving through the morning mist. Farmers. Some carry wooden hoes across their shoulders. Others lead oxen with slow, steady steps. Their sandals leave quiet marks in the damp soil near the river. The Nile is everything. Without it, these villages could not exist. Each year the river rises. It spreads rich black mud across nearby fields before gently returning to its banks. That dark soil feeds the crops. It feeds the people. It feeds the kingdom itself. The farmers understand this better than anyone. They watch the water with careful eyes. Too little flooding brings worry. Too much flooding brings different worries. Most years, they simply accept whatever the river offers. There is comfort in accepting what cannot be controlled. Morning grows brighter. The sun slowly appears above the eastern hills. Its first light reaches the tops of palm trees before touching rooftops below. Already the air begins warming. By midday, it will become heavy with heat. Everyone knows this. That is why much of the hardest labor begins now, while the morning remains gentle. Children finally wake. Some rub sleepy eyes while still wrapped in linen blankets. Others hurry outside before breakfast, chasing one another through dusty paths between homes. Laughter quietly fills spaces that only moments before belonged to birdsong. Older brothers and sisters quickly receive small responsibilities. Fetch water. Gather kindling. Watch younger children. Carry baskets. Help knead bread. No task seems unusual. This is simply how families live together. Work belongs to everyone. Even so, moments of peace still exist. An elderly grandfather sits beneath the shade of a sycamore tree. His years of farming have bent his back. Today his sons will tend the fields. He watches quietly as village life slowly unfolds before him. He has seen thousands of mornings exactly like this one. Perhaps that familiarity itself brings comfort. Near the riverbank, fishermen prepare narrow wooden boats. Their nets have already been repaired many times. Knots are checked carefully. Weights are tied securely. Everything must last as long as possible. Wood is valuable. Rope is valuable. Time is valuable. The fishermen push their boats into calm water. The river welcomes them without sound. Gentle ripples spread outward beneath the growing light. They know where fish often gather. Knowledge comes from years spent observing quiet patterns. The movement of birds. The shape of currents. The color of water. Nothing feels rushed. Patience often catches more fish than speed. Further inland, workshops begin opening. A potter mixes wet clay with practiced hands. The cool earth presses softly between his fingers. Nearby stands a wheel waiting to turn. Slowly. Steadily. Round and round. A simple lump of clay begins changing shape. A bowl. A cup. A storage jar. Nothing extravagant. Just objects that families will use every day. Across the village, carpenters begin smoothing rough wood with bronze tools. The scent of fresh-cut timber mixes gently with smoke from cooking fires. Hammering remains quiet compared to modern sounds. Most work depends upon careful hands rather than loud machines. Everything happens at the speed of people. Even builders working on larger projects move according to human strength. Stone does not lift itself. Wood does not carry itself. Every wall, every doorway, every roof depends upon many ordinary workers sharing the weight together. Their hands become rough. Their shoulders ache. By evening they will feel deeply tired. But for now, the day has only just begun. And the sun continues climbing higher above the peaceful waters of the Nile. The sunlight continues its slow climb across the valley, touching the tops of date palms before settling gently onto the fields beside the Nile. The coolness of dawn begins to disappear, almost without anyone noticing. A warmer breeze moves through the reeds, carrying the scent of damp earth, fresh grain, and quiet river water. The village has now fully awakened. From every narrow path, people move toward the work waiting for them. Their footsteps are unhurried. There is little reason to rush. The fields will still be there. The ovens will still be warm. The river will continue its endless journey whether a person walks quickly or slowly. A farmer adjusts the simple linen cloth around his shoulders before stepping into a field that still holds a little moisture from the night's cool air. The rich black soil is soft beneath his sandals. He bends low, pressing seeds into the earth one careful handful at a time. The work asks for patience more than strength. Each movement is repeated so many times that his body no longer needs to think about it. His hands know where to reach. His feet know where to step. His eyes quietly measure the rows stretching ahead. Nearby, another farmer guides a pair of oxen through the field. The wooden plow cuts narrow lines into the soil, leaving gentle ridges behind. The animals move at their own steady pace, their breathing slow and even. The farmer rarely speaks. There is no need. The soft creak of the wooden harness and the quiet footsteps of the animals become the morning's conversation. Above them, white birds circle through the clear sky before settling near freshly turned earth, searching for insects uncovered by the plow. The farmer notices them but does not chase them away. They have shared these fields for generations. Not far away, the sound of water grows slightly louder. Several young boys carry clay jars toward the Nile. The jars are empty now, making the journey easier. Before long, each jar will become surprisingly heavy. The river lies before them, wide and calm. Its surface reflects the bright sky with only gentle ripples where fish disturb the water. The boys kneel carefully along the muddy bank. One by one, they lower the jars beneath the surface. The cool water swirls inside, filling each vessel with quiet patience. Lifting them again takes effort. Small shoulders tighten beneath the weight. The journey home is slower. Water is precious. Not because the Nile is far away, but because every drop must be carried by hand. Some of it will become drinking water. Some will be used for cooking. Some will help shape fresh clay in a potter's workshop. Some will be poured carefully over vegetables growing in small garden plots beside family homes. Nothing is wasted. Near one house, an elderly woman sits beneath a woven shade stretched between two wooden posts. Before her rests a low basket filled with onions, garlic, lentils, and herbs gathered earlier that morning. She works quietly with practiced hands. Each vegetable is cleaned carefully. Each bundle is tied neatly with thin strips of plant fiber. Her fingers move more slowly than they once did. Years of work have stiffened her joints. Yet there is still grace in every movement. A young granddaughter sits beside her, watching closely. Without speaking very much, the child begins learning. No lessons are written. No instructions are read aloud. Knowledge passes from one pair of hands to another, generation after generation. Across the village, the smell of baking bread grows stronger. The ovens are simple domes of clay, darkened by years of smoke and fire. Inside, glowing coals warm the thick walls. Round loaves are pressed gently against the hot surface. Soon the bread begins to rise. Its crust slowly turns golden. The scent drifts through nearby streets, mixing with smoke and warm dust carried by the morning breeze. People passing by smile quietly. Fresh bread is one of the day's small comforts. Some families eat with onions. Others dip pieces into thick bean stew. A few may have dates gathered from nearby palms. For many, this simple meal provides enough strength to continue working until the afternoon. Children gather beneath patches of shade where the sunlight has not yet reached. Some shape tiny animals from damp clay. Others stack smooth stones into little towers before knocking them over again. Their games are simple. Their laughter rises briefly before disappearing into the wide morning air. Even while playing, they remain close enough to hear their parents calling if another small task appears. Responsibility arrives early in ancient Egypt. Yet childhood still finds quiet places to exist. Along the river, fishermen have already cast their nets. They wait. Waiting is perhaps the greatest part of fishing. The river cannot be hurried. The fish cannot be persuaded. The men sit quietly in their boats, watching tiny circles spread across the water whenever something moves beneath the surface. A gentle breeze rocks the boats almost without notice. The reeds sway together. Dragonflies skim low above the water, their delicate wings catching flashes of sunlight. One fisherman slowly pulls his net toward the boat. Water drips steadily back into the Nile. The woven fibers glisten in the light. Several fish shimmer among the mesh, twisting gently before becoming still. It is enough. Not a great catch. Not a poor one. Enough. Enough is often all anyone hopes for. Farther from the river, a group of builders begins another long morning beneath the growing heat. Their work is difficult. Large blocks of limestone wait where they were left the evening before. Each stone must be moved with careful planning. Wooden sledges slide across damp sand. Ropes stretch tight. Many hands pull together. No single worker could move such weight alone. Their breathing becomes deeper. Sweat forms across shoulders and backs. Dust clings to damp skin almost immediately. The foreman watches quietly. He does not shout often. The workers already know their rhythm. Pull. Pause. Breathe. Pull again. Every movement depends on cooperation. Every person carries part of the burden. Nearby, a young water carrier walks carefully among them. He offers cool water from large clay jars. The workers drink slowly. Not too quickly. The day has only begun, and the sun continues climbing higher. Beyond the building site, a scribe enters a government storehouse. Compared with the laborers outside, his work asks for different kinds of endurance. He carries no heavy stones. Instead, he carries reed pens, ink, and neatly rolled sheets of papyrus. The room is pleasantly cool. Its thick mud brick walls soften the heat outside. Bundles of grain line the walls in careful rows. Clay jars filled with oil stand beside woven baskets. Everything must be counted. The scribe settles onto a low stool. He smooths a sheet of papyrus across a wooden board. His brush touches black ink. Slowly, carefully, symbols begin to appear. Each mark is precise. Each number matters. If grain enters the storehouse, it must be recorded. If grain leaves, that too must be written down. Mistakes create confusion. Carefulness creates order. His work requires long hours of concentration. The room remains almost silent except for the soft scratch of the reed pen against papyrus. Outside, the village grows brighter beneath the widening sky. The morning coolness has almost completely vanished. Shadows become shorter. The heat settles gently over rooftops and open fields. Even the animals begin searching for shade. A donkey stands beneath a palm tree, flicking its tail lazily. Goats rest near mud walls warmed by the sun. Dogs stretch out beneath woven carts, sleeping through the hottest hours whenever they can. People understand the heat well. They have lived with it all their lives. Wide-brimmed hats woven from reeds offer some protection. Light linen clothing allows the breeze to pass through. Whenever possible, work shifts toward places where a little shade can still be found. Inside many homes, women continue preparing the midday meal. Clay pots simmer slowly over small fires. Lentils soften in warm water. Fresh herbs release gentle aromas into the air. Garlic and onions cook together until their sharp scent becomes rich and comforting. Children wander inside, drawn by the familiar smell. Some are given small pieces of bread while they wait. Others sit quietly beside grandparents who tell simple stories that have been spoken for many generations. Outside, life continues at its unhurried pace. The Nile flows beside it all, calm and faithful, carrying cool water through the heart of the valley just as it has for countless years, while another ordinary day in ancient Egypt unfolds beneath the warm and patient sun. The sun continues its gentle climb until it stands high above the valley. By now, the cool breath of morning has become only a memory. Warm light rests on every rooftop, every field, and every quiet path that winds between the homes. The shadows that had stretched so long at dawn have drawn close to the feet of those walking beneath them. The air feels still. Only now and then does a soft breeze drift across the Nile, carrying with it the scent of fresh water and wet reeds. Wherever that breeze reaches, people pause for a moment, grateful for even a small touch of coolness before returning to their work. This is the warmest part of the day. Everyone in the village knows it well. The heat is not a surprise. It arrives every day with calm certainty, and people have learned to live beside it rather than struggle against it. In the fields, farmers slow their pace. Their linen clothing is damp with sweat, and fine dust clings to their legs and arms. Their hands are rough from years of working the earth. Tiny cuts from reeds and dry stalks have long since become ordinary. The skin on their feet has grown thick from walking across soil, stone, and packed earth. One farmer straightens his back after many hours bent over the crops. For a few moments he simply stands. His eyes travel across the wide fields where green plants rise from the rich black soil left behind by the Nile's yearly flood. In the distance, he can see other workers moving slowly between the rows. They appear almost silent beneath the bright sky. There is comfort in knowing that many others are sharing the same day. No one works entirely alone. A short distance away, several women gather beneath the shade of a broad sycamore tree. They have carried baskets filled with grain, vegetables, and fresh bread from their homes. Now it is time to eat. The meal is simple. A round loaf of warm bread is broken into pieces by hand. One woman passes a small bowl filled with mashed beans seasoned with herbs. Another offers onions, dates, and fresh cucumbers gathered from a nearby garden. there is little conversation at first. After hours of work, eating quietly feels peaceful. The only sounds are gentle ones. Bread being torn. Clay cups set carefully upon the ground. A child laughing somewhere nearby. The wind moving softly through leaves overhead. When the meal is finished, everyone rests for a little while. Some lean against the wide trunk of the tree. Others stretch out upon woven mats spread across the cool earth. Eyes close. Not everyone falls asleep. Some simply enjoy the stillness. The body asks for rest before returning to another afternoon of labor. Across the village, similar scenes unfold. Builders place their tools aside for a short time. Stonecutters sit upon large blocks of limestone, wiping dust from their faces with linen cloths. Potters leave freshly shaped jars to dry while they drink cool water from narrow-necked vessels. Even donkeys and oxen stand quietly beneath patches of shade, lowering their heads as flies drift lazily around them. The whole village seems to breathe more slowly. The afternoon light has a softness despite its brightness. Time itself feels unhurried. Inside one modest home, the thick mud brick walls keep the rooms pleasantly cool. A grandmother sits beside a spinning spindle. With patient fingers she twists flax fibers into fine thread. The spindle turns gently. Round and round. Again. And again. The movement is almost hypnotic. Years of practice have made every motion smooth. She hardly looks at her hands anymore. Instead, her eyes rest upon her young grandson, who lies sleeping on a woven reed mat nearby. His breathing is slow. A small clay toy rests beside him. Outside, the village remains busy, but inside the room there is only quiet. Sunlight enters through a small window high in the wall, creating a bright square upon the floor that slowly shifts as the hours pass. Nothing disturbs the peaceful silence. Not far away, another family is busy making linen cloth. Bundles of harvested flax have already been soaked, dried, and prepared. Now long fibers are carefully combed until they become soft and smooth. Several women work together. Their hands move with practiced rhythm. One spins thread. Another winds it into neat bundles. A third operates a simple loom. Wooden beams hold the threads tightly in place while new strands are woven across them. Slowly, almost invisibly, a length of cloth begins to appear. Every garment begins this way. Every bandage. Every blanket. Every sail upon a fishing boat. Thread becomes fabric through patience. Nothing about the process can be rushed. The work asks for steady hands and quiet attention. Across the dusty street, a young apprentice follows an older carpenter. The master speaks only now and then. Most lessons are shown rather than explained. The older man selects a piece of sycamore wood and runs his hand across its surface. He studies the grain before making the first careful cut. The apprentice watches closely. He notices how slowly each movement is made. A careless cut wastes precious wood. A patient cut creates something useful. The carpenter shapes wooden pegs that will hold together a chair without needing metal nails. Nearby, another craftsman smooths the curved handle of a farming tool until it fits comfortably within a worker's hand. These objects are made to last. Every piece of wood has value. Nothing is thrown away without reason. As the afternoon continues, merchants begin arriving from neighboring villages. Some lead donkeys carrying baskets balanced carefully across their backs. Others push simple wooden carts. They bring salt gathered from distant places. Fresh fish packed in damp reeds. Fine pottery. Honey. Bundles of papyrus. Colorful beads carved from stone. The marketplace slowly fills with gentle conversation. No one seems hurried. People examine each item carefully. A loaf of bread may be exchanged for onions. A woven basket for dried fish. A small jar of oil for fresh linen thread. Coins are still unknown for much of Egypt's long history. Instead, value is understood through goods and careful agreement. Every exchange depends upon trust built over many years. Children wander between the stalls, their eyes wide with curiosity. One boy stops to admire a craftsman carving tiny wooden animals. A girl watches bright beads catching the sunlight. Neither expects to receive such treasures. Simply looking is enough. The marketplace is filled with colors that brighten the dusty afternoon. The smell of fresh bread mixes with herbs, warm pottery, leather, smoke, and river fish drying beneath the sun. It is a familiar collection of scents. The scent of ordinary life. Not every day is easy. Among the crowd walks a man whose shoulders remain slightly bent from an old injury received years earlier while lifting heavy stone. He moves more slowly than before. Some days the pain is small. Other days it lingers from morning until night. Yet work continues. Nearby sits an elderly woman whose eyesight has become weak. She no longer threads needles as she once did. Instead, she shells beans, tells stories to children, and teaches younger women recipes that have belonged to her family for generations. Age changes everyone's work. It does not remove their place within the village. As afternoon slowly stretches onward, the heat begins to soften almost imperceptibly. The harsh brightness loses a little of its strength. Long shadows begin their quiet return. Birds become more active once again. Fishermen guide their boats toward shore after spending many peaceful hours upon the river. Some boats carry baskets filled with silver fish glistening in the fading light. Others return with only a modest catch. There is little disappointment. Tomorrow the river will still be there. The Nile offers generously, but never according to anyone's wishes. Families gather along the shore to greet them. Children help pull boats onto the muddy bank. Fresh fish are cleaned with practiced hands before being salted, dried, or prepared for the evening meal. Nearby, several women wash clothing in the shallows. They kneel beside smooth stones, dipping linen into cool water before gently beating away the dust gathered during the day's labor. The rhythm is slow. Splash. Lift. Fold. Splash again. The river carries each small ripple away without complaint. As the sun begins its long journey toward the western horizon, the golden light becomes softer than it was only an hour before. Palm trees cast graceful shadows across the fields. The walls of mud brick homes glow with warm color. Smoke rises once more from cooking fires. The smell of evening bread drifts through the village. People begin making their way home. The busiest hours of labor are nearly finished, and another peaceful evening is quietly beginning beside the steady waters of the Nile. The afternoon slowly gives way to evening. The bright white light that covered the valley begins to soften into gentle shades of gold. The heat, which only a little while ago rested heavily upon the fields and rooftops, slowly loosens its grip. A quiet breeze returns from the Nile, carrying with it cool moisture from the water and the sweet smell of growing reeds. People notice the change without speaking of it. Their shoulders relax. Their steps become a little slower. The hardest work of the day is nearly finished. Across the fields, farmers gather their wooden tools before beginning the familiar walk home. Hoes are lifted onto tired shoulders. Small baskets, now much lighter than they were that morning, swing gently with every step. Sandals press soft marks into dusty paths that have been walked by countless generations. No one hurries. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise. Tomorrow will bring another day's work. For now, there is comfort simply in returning home. The village grows busier once again, though not with the busy feeling of morning. This is a gentler movement. Families slowly gather together after spending the day apart. Children who have been helping in gardens or carrying water race ahead toward home, their voices floating through the warm evening air. The adults smile quietly. They remember having the same energy many years before. Near the riverbank, fishermen pull their boats farther onto dry ground before turning them upside down to protect the wood during the night. Their nets are spread across simple wooden frames where the last drops of water fall back into the earth. Now begins another important task. Every net must be inspected. Tiny tears are easy to miss. A single broken strand may seem unimportant today, but tomorrow it could become a much larger opening through which many fish might escape. One elderly fisherman sits cross-legged beside his net. His hands move slowly. A needle carved from bone carries fresh cord through the worn places. Back and forth. Loop after loop. The work is peaceful. There is no need for conversation. The sound of birds settling into the reeds is enough company. Farther inland, smoke rises from nearly every rooftop. Evening meals are being prepared. Inside one home, a clay oven still holds warmth from the bread baked earlier in the day. A young woman places another small loaf inside while stirring a pot of lentils over a gentle fire. Steam rises quietly into the room, carrying the comforting smell of onions, garlic, and herbs. Her youngest child sits nearby, watching the flames dance beneath the pot. The child asks small questions. Why does the bread rise? Why does the fire glow red beneath the wood? Why do the birds always fly toward the river before sunset? The mother answers softly. Some answers are simple. Some become little stories. In ancient Egypt, many lessons are shared this way, during ordinary moments while hands continue their daily work. Outside, goats return to their small enclosures. Their bells make soft sounds as they walk. Donkeys carry the last baskets of the day before being gently brushed and given fresh water. Oxen lower themselves onto the ground with slow, heavy movements after many hours in the fields. Even the animals seem grateful for the cooler air. The village itself begins changing with the light. The bright colors of midday fade into softer tones. The mud brick walls take on a warm golden glow. Palm leaves shimmer quietly whenever the evening breeze passes through them. The Nile reflects the changing sky. What had been bright blue now becomes streaked with gold, pale orange, and gentle purple. The water continues flowing exactly as it always has. It neither slows nor hurries. Its steady movement has become part of every person's life. Some villagers come to the river simply to sit for a little while. A father and his two sons settle upon the bank after washing away the dust of the day. Their feet rest in the cool water. The younger boy watches tiny fish swim between reeds near the shore. The older son skips a small stone across the surface. Each bounce leaves circles that slowly grow larger before disappearing. The father says very little. There is no need to fill every quiet moment with words. Sometimes sharing silence is enough. Nearby, several women fill large clay jars with fresh water for tomorrow morning. The jars feel heavy as they are lifted onto shoulders or balanced carefully upon their heads. Years of practice have made the task appear almost effortless. Their posture remains straight. Their steps remain steady. Even when carrying great weight, they move with calm confidence. The paths leading through the village become filled with familiar greetings. Neighbors pause beside one another. A few exchange fresh vegetables. Someone offers a handful of dates. Another shares a little extra bread baked earlier in the day. Small acts of kindness are woven naturally into daily life. There is comfort in knowing that people look after one another. As darkness slowly approaches, children finish their games. Dust clings to their legs and hands. Some have spent the afternoon chasing one another between palm trees. Others have built tiny houses from mud or floated little reed boats along narrow irrigation channels. Their laughter begins to fade as parents call them home. Reluctantly, they leave their games behind. Tomorrow they will begin again. Within one modest house, a grandfather sits upon a low stool beside the doorway. His face carries deep lines shaped by many decades beneath the Egyptian sun. His hands no longer have the strength they once possessed, yet they remain gentle. Around him gather several children. This has become part of nearly every evening. The day's work is over. The evening meal is cooking. There is time for stories. He speaks of the Nile. Not as something distant or mysterious, but as an old friend that has cared for the people since before anyone can remember. He tells of years when the flood waters came exactly as hoped, leaving behind rich black soil that promised good harvests. He remembers seasons when the water arrived late, making everyone wait with quiet patience. His stories are not filled with heroes. They are filled with ordinary people. Neighbors helping neighbors. Families working together. Children growing into adults. The stories feel as calm as the river itself. Inside many homes, evening meals are finally ready. Families gather close together upon woven mats spread across the floor. There are no large tables. Food is placed within easy reach. Warm bread. Stewed lentils. Fresh vegetables. Perhaps a little fish caught earlier that afternoon. Sometimes figs. Sometimes dates. Sometimes a small piece of cheese made from goat's milk. The meal is simple. Yet after a long day's labor, it feels deeply satisfying. Conversation comes slowly. Someone asks how the fields are growing. Another speaks of repairing a roof before the next season. A child proudly explains how they carried water without spilling a single drop. The family listens with quiet smiles. No one rushes to finish eating. Outside, the village grows quieter with every passing moment. The last merchants finish packing their goods. Workshop doors close one by one. The potter covers his unfinished jars with damp cloth so they will not dry too quickly overnight. The carpenter places his bronze tools inside a wooden chest. The baker sweeps flour from the floor before closing the oven. Each craft pauses until morning. Above the village, the first evening stars begin appearing one by one. They seem faint at first. Then, as the sky darkens, more and more become visible. People often glance upward without stopping their work. The stars are familiar companions. They have watched these same evenings throughout countless generations. As night continues to settle over the valley, oil lamps begin glowing inside the homes. Their gentle light flickers against smooth mud walls, creating soft moving shadows. The air inside the houses grows peaceful. Outside, the sounds of daytime fade away. The steady rhythm of hammers has ended. The calls of merchants have become quiet. Only gentle sounds remain. A donkey shifts in its sleep. Crickets begin their evening song. Palm leaves whisper together in the breeze. And always, just beyond the village, the Nile continues its patient journey through the darkness, flowing beneath the first stars of another calm and ordinary night in ancient Egypt. Night settles gently across the Nile Valley. The last colors of sunset slowly disappear beyond the western hills, leaving behind a sky that grows deeper with every passing moment. One by one, the stars brighten until they seem to cover the whole heavens. Their light is clear in the dry desert air, and they reflect softly upon the quiet surface of the river. The village has become still. Not completely silent. There are always small sounds that belong to the night. A breeze brushes through the palm fronds. A goat shifts quietly inside its shelter. Water laps gently against the muddy bank. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird calls once before falling silent again. The air feels different now. The heavy warmth of the afternoon has faded into a pleasant coolness. The thick mud brick walls of the homes, which absorbed the heat of the day, now slowly release it back into the night. Inside, the rooms remain comfortable, protected from both the burning sun and the cool desert darkness beyond. Families gather close together after the evening meal. Oil lamps burn with small, steady flames. Their light is soft enough that no corner of the room is brightly lit. Instead, everything seems wrapped in warm shades of gold and amber. Shadows move gently across the walls whenever someone passes in front of the lamp. There is no hurry. The day's work has already been completed. Tomorrow's work has not yet begun. These quiet hours belong to rest. In one home, a mother carefully folds linen garments that have dried in the afternoon sun. Each piece is shaken gently before being placed into a woven basket. She smooths the cloth with the palm of her hand, removing small wrinkles that no one else would likely notice. Nearby, her husband repairs the leather strap of a sandal. He holds the worn sandal close to the lamplight. A small bronze needle passes through the leather. Pull. Tighten. Another careful stitch. The sandal has already served him through many seasons. With a little care, it may last through many more. Nothing useful is thrown away simply because it has grown old. Everything is repaired. Everything is cared for. A wooden bowl with a small crack is sealed. A fishing net is tied again. A basket receives a new woven handle. Life depends as much upon careful maintenance as it does upon hard work. Outside, the narrow streets between the houses are almost empty. Only now and then does someone pass by carrying a small oil lamp. The light sways gently with every step, creating moving circles upon the packed earth. Neighbors exchange quiet greetings before disappearing into their own homes. There is no need for loud voices. Night naturally encourages softness. The village understands this without anyone speaking of it. Along the riverbank, a few fishermen remain awake. Tomorrow they hope to leave before sunrise. Their boats rest upon the shore, pulled safely beyond the water's edge. One fisherman sits beside his vessel, looking out across the Nile. The river is almost impossible to separate from the sky. The stars above and the stars reflected below seem to meet together. Only the slow movement of the current reminds him where the water truly lies. He breathes deeply. The cool night air carries the scent of damp reeds and fresh mud left by the river. It is a smell he has known since childhood. Perhaps it reminds him of mornings spent beside his father. Perhaps it reminds him of evenings just like this one, many years ago. Memories often return most clearly during quiet nights. Not far away, another family prepares for sleep. Their home is small. The walls are smooth and carefully repaired after each rainy season, though rain itself is uncommon. The roof is made from wooden beams covered with reeds, branches, and packed mud. Simple. Strong. Cool. The floor is hard packed earth, swept clean every morning. A woven mat is rolled across the sleeping area. Blankets made from linen are unfolded. There are no large beds such as those belonging to wealthy households. Most ordinary families sleep close together. Children settle beside their parents. The youngest often fall asleep first. After a day filled with running, helping, learning, and exploring, sleep arrives quickly. Their breathing becomes slow, peaceful, steady. Parents remain awake a little longer. They speak quietly about tomorrow. The wheat in one field is growing well. The roof may need another layer of mud before the next season. Their oldest son has become strong enough to help with heavier work. Their youngest daughter has learned to shape bread almost perfectly. These are ordinary conversations. Simple thoughts. The kind that gently close one day before opening another. Across the village, elderly people remain awake slightly longer than everyone else. Sleep sometimes comes more slowly with age. One old woman steps outside her doorway carrying a small stool. She sits beneath the open sky. The stars shine brightly above her. She has seen this same sky for many decades. As a little girl, she watched these stars while sitting beside her own grandmother. As a young mother, she carried sleeping children beneath this same sky. Now those children have children of their own. The stars have changed very little. The people below them have changed with every passing year. She smiles gently before returning indoors. The night breeze follows her through the doorway. Farther from the village, the fields lie quiet beneath silver moonlight. The wheat moves softly whenever the wind passes over it. Palm trees sway with slow, graceful motion. Small animals leave delicate footprints in the sand before disappearing into the darkness. Everything seems calmer after sunset. The day's labor has ended. Even the earth itself appears to rest. Beyond the cultivated fields stretches the desert. Its rolling sands seem endless beneath the moon. During the day, they glow with brilliant light. Now they appear soft and pale, almost like gentle waves frozen in place. Few people travel there at night. The village remains close to the river. The Nile offers water, food, fertile soil, and familiar paths. The desert is respected from a distance. Within the homes, the oil lamps burn lower. Their flames become smaller as the oil is slowly consumed. One by one, families gently pinch the flames closed. Darkness fills the rooms. Only moonlight enters through small windows and open doorways. The cool night air flows quietly inside. Some families choose to sleep upon their rooftops during the hottest months of the year. The flat roofs become peaceful resting places after sunset. Mats are spread carefully across the surface. Parents lie beside their children beneath the wide sky. Above them stretches a blanket of countless stars. The air is fresh. The breeze is gentle. The sounds of the village drift upward only faintly. Someone coughs in the distance. A baby stirs for a moment before falling asleep again. The river continues its endless whisper. For many, sleeping beneath the open sky becomes one of the quiet pleasures of summer. The night feels larger there. Closer to the heavens. Closer to the steady rhythm of nature that shapes every day of life. Hours pass slowly. The moon climbs higher. Its light paints long shadows across courtyards and rooftops. Inside workshops, unfinished tasks wait patiently for another sunrise. A half-shaped clay jar rests upon the potter's wheel. A carpenter's chisel lies exactly where it was placed. Bundles of papyrus remain neatly stacked beside the scribe's writing board. Nothing asks to be finished tonight. The village has earned its rest. Even the guards who watch over storehouses and granaries move quietly through the darkness. They carry simple staffs and small lamps. Their footsteps are slow. Every so often they pause, listening. not because danger is expected, but because careful watchfulness is simply part of their duty. Most nights pass peacefully. The greatest sound is often the wind. As midnight approaches, the entire valley seems wrapped in gentle silence. The Nile flows beneath the stars exactly as it flowed yesterday and as it will flow tomorrow. The reeds along its banks sway with patient rhythm. The homes remain still. The workshops sleep. The fields wait for the first light of dawn. And somewhere, far beyond the quiet village, the first cool hint of another morning has already begun its slow journey toward the ancient land of Egypt. The night deepens even further, becoming softer and quieter as it moves toward its calmest hours. The village now rests almost completely still. Even the small sounds that lingered earlier have begun to fade, as if the world itself has lowered its voice. The breeze moves more slowly now, slipping between palm trees and narrow paths without disturbing anything that sleeps beneath it. Above, the sky remains wide and endless. The stars feel steady, unchanging, like silent watchers who have seen countless nights pass over this same land. Their light is not bright in a sharp way. It is soft, distant, and patient, touching the earth without effort. The Nile continues its slow movement through the darkness. It does not rush. It never has. Its surface reflects the sky so gently that it becomes difficult to tell where water ends and heaven begins. Along its banks, reeds bend slightly with the current of air, their thin leaves brushing one another in a faint, almost whisper-like sound. In the village, sleep has fully taken hold. Inside the homes, families lie close together for warmth and comfort. The darkness inside is complete now that the oil lamps have gone out. Only the faintest traces of moonlight slip through small openings in the walls or roof, creating pale shapes on the ground that shift slowly as the night passes. Breathing becomes the only rhythm inside the rooms. Slow. Even. Peaceful. A child turns slightly in sleep, resting more deeply against a woven mat. A parent adjusts a thin linen blanket without waking. The body settles into rest after a long day of labor, as it has done for generations beyond memory. Outside, a few animals remain awake. A donkey shifts its weight and lowers its head again. A cat moves quietly along a wall before disappearing into shadow. Even these movements feel gentle, as if the night encourages all living things to conserve their energy, to rest, to pause. At the edge of the village, a narrow path leads toward the river. Here, the air feels slightly cooler. The ground is softer, darker from the moisture of the Nile. A single fisherman still sits near his boat. He has not moved for a long time. The vessel rests tilted on its side, pulled safely above the water line. He watches the river without thinking of anything in particular. There is comfort in the stillness. In the daytime, the river is work. It is effort. It is survival. But in the night, it becomes something else entirely. A presence. A companion. A quiet force that never leaves. He remembers, without trying to remember, the way his father once sat beside him in the same place. The same silence. The same river. The same stars. Time feels less like a straight path and more like a circle that repeats gently, again and again, with each generation sitting where the last once sat. Farther inland, a few lanterns still glow faintly. These belong to night watchmen and caretakers of storage houses. The granaries stand quietly, filled with grain gathered from the fields earlier in the year. Their thick mud brick walls keep the stored harvest cool and protected. Inside one of these storage buildings, a guard walks slowly along the rows of sealed containers. His footsteps are soft against the packed earth floor. He pauses every so often, placing a hand lightly on a wooden beam or checking the tight seal of a clay jar. Everything is in order. Everything is as it should be. There is a certain comfort in this repetition. Nothing changes too quickly here. Seasons move at their own pace. The river rises and falls in its own time. Even the night itself arrives and leaves with calm predictability. Outside, the desert begins just beyond the cultivated land. It stretches outward without end, resting under moonlight that makes its sands appear almost silver. In the distance, the shapes of small hills look like sleeping waves. No paths remain here except those made by wind or passing animals. The desert is quiet in a different way from the village. It is not the quiet of life resting. It is the quiet of vast emptiness. Yet even this emptiness feels familiar to those who live nearby. It is part of the same world. Part of the same balance. The village depends on the river. The river is bordered by fields. The fields end where the desert begins. Each part gives meaning to the others. As the night continues, the moon climbs higher above the valley. Its light becomes slightly brighter, casting long, thin shadows across rooftops and palm trunks. On the rooftops of a few homes, families still sleep beneath the open sky. The heat of the day makes this practice common during certain seasons. Mats are laid carefully across flat surfaces. People lie side by side, wrapped in light coverings. From above, they appear almost like quiet shapes resting beneath a silver ocean of stars. A soft breeze moves over them. It carries the scent of river water, dry grass, and warm stone slowly cooling after sunset. A mother gently pulls a blanket closer around her child without fully waking. A father shifts slightly, finding a more comfortable position. Then everything becomes still again. Even dreams seem to arrive more slowly here, as if they too respect the silence of the night. In one corner of the village, an elderly man remains awake a little longer than most. He sits near the doorway of his home, leaning lightly against the wall. His eyes are open but calm. He listens to the night. Not for anything in particular. Just listening. The sound of distant water. The faint movement of wind through palm leaves. The occasional rustle of something small moving through dry grass. He has heard these sounds for many decades. They are not new. Yet they never feel exactly the same either. Each night carries its own quiet personality. Eventually, he stands slowly and returns inside. The home is dark now. Only the faint glow of moonlight outlines the edges of objects within. He lies down beside his family. Sleep comes without effort. Across the village, deeper into the night, even the most patient wakefulness begins to fade. The guards continue their slow walks. The river continues its patient flow. The desert continues its silent watching. And the Nile Valley rests beneath the wide sky, held gently between water and sand, between life and stillness, between the day that has already passed and the day that has not yet arrived. Time moves forward. But here, in this place, it does so quietly. Like footsteps on soft earth that leave almost no sound behind. The night reaches its deepest hours now, when even time itself seems to slow. The village is almost completely still. The wind has softened into long, gentle breaths that move across the land without urgency. The Nile continues its steady flow, but even it appears quieter under the heavy calm of darkness. The water reflects the sky so clearly that the stars seem to rest upon its surface. Everything feels suspended. Not frozen. Just resting. In the homes, sleep is deep and unbroken. Families lie together in the soft darkness, their bodies relaxed after the long labor of the day. The heat of earlier hours has fully left the rooms now. The walls, thick and strong, hold a steady coolness that makes the night comfortable. Inside one home, a child shifts slightly and settles again, breathing evenly. Nearby, an adult rests an arm protectively without waking. The closeness of sleeping bodies is ordinary here. It brings comfort during the quiet hours when the world outside feels vast and open. There are no sounds of work now. No footsteps in the fields. No voices in the marketplace. No movement of tools or stone. Only rest. Outside, along narrow paths between homes, moonlight falls in pale shapes across the ground. The village looks different at this hour. Familiar places seem softened, as if the edges of everything have been gently smoothed by darkness. A clay pot near a doorway casts a long, thin shadow. A woven basket leans against a wall, untouched until morning. A small pile of tools rests where they were left at sunset, waiting patiently for hands that will return to them later. Near the edge of the village, the river remains awake. It is always awake. The Nile does not sleep as people do. It moves with quiet certainty, carrying water from distant lands, passing through fields and villages, and continuing onward beyond sight. A faint mist rises from its surface in places where the air has grown cooler. It drifts slowly above the water before dissolving into the night. A single fish breaks the surface briefly, creating a small ripple that spreads outward in gentle circles before disappearing again into stillness. On the riverbank, a fisherman remains near his boat. He has not spoken in a long time. The night encourages silence. His hands rest loosely on his knees. He watches the water without expectation. There is no need to search for fish now. No need to prepare nets. No need to plan the next task. The river is simply there, as it has always been. Beside him, the wooden boat rests on the damp earth, its surface darkened by years of water and sun. Nets are folded carefully inside, still damp from earlier use. Everything is prepared for the morning, when work will begin again. But for now, there is only this quiet moment. Farther away, in a small guard post near a storage building, a man slowly walks a familiar path. His lantern casts a weak glow that moves with him, tracing soft light along the ground. The granaries around him are silent and secure. Inside, grain lies stored in large containers, protected from moisture and pests. The harvest of many hands rests here, gathered and preserved for future seasons. He stops at each door, checking the seals with calm routine. Everything is unchanged. Everything is as expected. This repetition brings reassurance. In a world shaped by the Nile's rhythms, stability is something deeply understood. The river floods, recedes, and returns. The fields grow and rest. The seasons shift in slow cycles. Even human life follows this pattern of movement and pause. The night is simply another part of that cycle. Above, the moon begins to descend slightly, though it still holds its place high in the sky. Its light grows softer, spreading across the valley like a thin veil. Palm trees stand motionless beneath it, their fronds barely moving. The fields lie quiet, their crops resting in the cool darkness. Small animals move carefully through the undergrowth, leaving brief traces that vanish quickly behind them. In one home near the center of the village, an elderly woman wakes briefly. Not from disturbance. Just a natural moment of awareness in the middle of the night. She sits up slowly, listening. Everything is calm. She adjusts her blanket and looks toward the faint light of the moon coming through a small opening in the wall. For a moment, she remains like this. Still. Present. Then she lies back down. Sleep returns easily. This small moment repeats in many homes across the village. People stir briefly, then settle again. The body follows its own quiet rhythm through the night, rising and falling like breath. Outside, the river continues its long journey. It does not pause for those who sleep beside it. It does not hurry for those who wake before dawn. It simply moves. Always moving. Always steady. Beyond the cultivated land, the desert remains vast and still under the moonlight. Its silence feels different from the village, but not separate. It is part of the same world, stretching outward into places few people ever need to go. The wind passes over the dunes, shaping them slowly, almost imperceptibly. No one watches this change. Yet it happens all the same. As the night continues, the village grows even quieter, reaching the deepest point of rest before the first hint of dawn. The stars begin to shift slightly in the sky, though most people would never notice. Their movement is slow, patient, and constant, like everything else in this land. The Nile flows. The land rests. The people sleep. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the first faint suggestion of morning begins to form, not yet light, not yet color, but something gentle and distant that signals another day is quietly approaching. The night begins its slow return toward morning. It is not something that can be seen clearly at first. There is no sudden change, no sharp shift in the air. Instead, it is a quiet softening, as if the darkness itself is growing lighter in weight. The stars remain, but they feel slightly less sharp than before. The sky above the Nile holds its deep color, yet in the farthest edge of the horizon, a faint sense of change begins to form. The village still sleeps. Almost everything remains still. Inside the homes, families continue resting in the same close, quiet arrangements. The warmth of shared sleep lingers beneath thin blankets. Breathing remains slow and even, rising and falling like the steady rhythm of the river itself. A child turns gently, pressing closer to a parent without waking. A hand shifts slightly, then becomes still again. These small movements happen across many homes at once, yet none disturb the peace of the night. Outside, the air is at its coolest now. It carries the softest breath of the desert that has traveled across fields and water before settling here among the palm trees and mud brick walls. The warmth of the day is gone completely. Only a calm, cool stillness remains. Along the riverbank, the fisherman who has stayed awake through much of the night finally lowers his head slightly. Not fully asleep. Just resting. The river beside him continues its quiet motion. He has spent so many nights here that the sound of it feels almost like a second heartbeat. It requires no attention. It asks for nothing. It simply continues, flowing through darkness as it has always done. His boat rests behind him, turned on its side, its shape barely visible in the dim light. Everything is ready for the morning. But the morning is still far enough away that it does not yet ask for anything. In the guard post near the granaries, the watchman completes another slow circuit around the storage buildings. His lantern is dim now, its oil reduced by hours of quiet walking. The light it casts is small, but enough to guide his steps. He pauses for a moment beside one of the thick wooden doors. He listens. Only the wind responds. Everything is secure. Everything remains unchanged. He continues walking. This repetition has become the rhythm of the night for him. Step. Pause. Listen. Continue. There is comfort in knowing that the world remains steady while most people sleep. Far beyond the village, the desert lies under a pale, silver glow. The dunes appear smooth and endless, shaped by winds that do not rest even at night. Yet the changes they create are so slow that they feel almost like stillness. The desert is not empty in the way people sometimes imagine. It is simply vast. Wide enough that silence feels natural within it. Occasionally, a small animal moves across the sand, leaving delicate tracks that fade before the night is over. But most of the time, there is nothing but wind and moonlight. Back in the village, the rooftops remain quiet. During warmer seasons, many families sleep above their homes, where the night air is cooler and more open. Now they lie still beneath the fading stars. Blankets are drawn close. Bodies rest side by side. The roofs themselves seem to hold a gentle stillness, as if they too are part of the sleeping village. A soft breeze passes over them, carrying the faint scent of the river. Somewhere, a child murmurs briefly in sleep, then falls silent again. In one home near the center of the village, a baker begins to stir. Not fully awake yet, but aware of the coming hours. His body remembers the rhythm of his work more than his mind does. Soon, before the first light appears, he will rise to prepare dough once again. But for now, he remains still, caught between sleep and the earliest memory of responsibility. Across the village, similar thoughts exist in many homes. Farmers begin to sense the approaching day even before they open their eyes. Water carriers feel it in the quietness of their rest. Scribes and craftsmen carry it in the back of their minds like a gentle reminder that tomorrow is always near. Yet no one rises yet. The night still holds them. Above, the sky continues its slow transformation. The darkness is not disappearing quickly. It is thinning, almost invisibly, like fabric slowly stretched toward light. The stars begin to feel more distant, though they remain visible. The moon continues its journey, now slightly lower than before. Its light softens across the landscape, no longer bright silver but something more muted, more delicate. The Nile reflects this change in its own way. Its surface, once dark and reflective, now carries a faint suggestion of depth beneath the sky's subtle shift. The water moves without interruption. It has seen this moment countless times before. Night giving way to morning. Morning returning to night. A cycle without beginning or end. Inside the village, the first true signs of waking remain far away, but something begins to change in feeling rather than sight. The air feels slightly more open. The silence feels less heavy. Even the stillness seems to loosen its grip. Yet everything remains quiet. No one speaks. No fires are lit yet. No footsteps cross the paths between homes. It is the most delicate part of the night, when the world feels balanced between rest and return. The fisherman by the river finally closes his eyes fully. Not in deep sleep, but in the soft drifting rest that comes just before dawn. The watchman slows his pace even further, knowing the night is nearly complete. Inside the homes, families remain peacefully unaware of the coming change. They continue sleeping, held gently within the final hours of darkness. And the Nile Valley, ancient and patient, waits beneath the sky for the first hint of light that will soon arrive once again, bringing another ordinary, steady, and quiet day. The final hours of night are always the quietest. Not because the world has changed, but because everything living within it has settled so deeply into rest that even movement feels far away. The air holds a soft stillness, like a thin veil resting over the Nile Valley, untouched and undisturbed. The sky continues its slow transformation. Darkness is still present, but it no longer feels complete. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the faintest trace of light begins to gather, not yet visible as color, but felt more than seen. A quiet shift, as if the world is gently preparing itself for another morning. In the village, Sleep remains steady. Homes are wrapped in calm darkness, their mud brick walls holding the final coolness of the night. Inside, families continue to rest in close, familiar arrangements. There is comfort in the presence of others, even in silence. The body relaxes more deeply in these final hours, as if it understands that morning is near but not yet here. A child breathes slowly, turning slightly beneath a linen cloth. An elder lies still, face softened by sleep. A young worker, whose hands will soon return to fields or tools, rests without thought of the day ahead. Everything is paused. Everything is held gently in place. Outside, the river moves through the stillness without interruption. The Nile has no beginning to its rhythm each day, no clear moment of waking. It flows through night and morning alike, carrying the same patient motion it has always carried. Its surface is darker now, but not heavy. It reflects what little remains of the night sky, though the stars are beginning to fade at the edges. Along its banks, reeds stand quietly in clusters, their thin shapes barely moving. A soft current of air passes over them, causing only the smallest rustle, like a whisper that does not wish to be heard. The fisherman who had remained awake through much of the night now rests with his head lowered near his knees. His boat sits behind him, still turned on its side, its edges outlined faintly by the dim light. He is not fully asleep, not fully awake. He is in that calm space between, where thoughts do not form clearly and time feels distant. This is a familiar state for those who live close to the river. Night and morning are not separate worlds here. They blend gently into one another. In the guard post near the granaries, the watchman continues his slow, careful movement. His lantern now burns very low, its flame small and steady, as if conserving itself for the final stretch of darkness. He walks with the same rhythm he has kept all night. Step. Pause. Listen. Continue. The storage buildings around him remain silent and secure. Inside, the grain of many harvests rests in large containers, untouched and safe. The village depends on this quiet protection, though most people will never see the guards work in detail. He pauses again, resting briefly beside a doorway. The air feels slightly different now. Not colder. Not warmer. Just shifting. He notices it without needing to understand it. The night is nearing its end. Far beyond the fields, the desert holds its own version of stillness. Under moonlight that is now beginning to weaken, the dunes appear softer, less sharply defined than before. The vast open space remains unchanged in form, yet it feels subtly closer to the approaching day. The wind continues to pass over the sand in long, slow movements. It leaves no lasting trace. Everything it shapes is temporary. This quiet impermanence is part of the desert's nature, as familiar to those who live nearby as the river's steady flow. Back in the village, rooftops remain still. But there is a slight change now, almost imperceptible. A few sleepers begin to shift more frequently, not yet waking, but moving closer to awareness. The body senses the approach of morning before the mind does. A hand adjusts a blanket. A foot extends slightly into the cooler air. A breath deepens for a moment before returning to rest. These are small signs, scattered across many homes, unnoticed by those within them. Above, the sky continues to lighten in the farthest distance. It is still night everywhere overhead, but at the edge of the world, darkness begins to thin like smoke dispersing into air. The stars grow slightly less bright. Not disappearing, only softening. The Nile reflects this change gently. Its surface carries faint hints of the coming dawn, though no color has fully arrived yet. Everything remains in transition. Neither night nor morning. Only the space between. In one home, the baker finally stirs more clearly. His body has followed this rhythm for years. Even without clocks or signals, he knows when to rise. Slowly, he opens his eyes. The room is still dark. He listens for a moment. Silence. Then he begins to move. Carefully, so as not to wake others, he sits up and reaches for his tools. Soon, dough will be prepared. Soon, ovens will warm again. But for now, he moves quietly in the dimness, accepting the coming day without resistance. Across the village, similar awakenings begin to appear in soft, gradual stages. Not full waking. Just awareness returning in small pieces. Farmers think briefly of fields. Water carriers sense the need for early movement. Scribes remember their waiting boards and ink. Each life returns toward its daily shape, slowly and naturally. Outside, the watchman takes one final slow walk around the granary. Everything remains secure. The night has been uneventful. As it almost always is. He stops near the edge of the building and looks toward the eastern horizon. There, the sky is no longer fully dark. A faint, pale suggestion of morning rests just beyond sight. He does not call attention to it. There is no need. The village will feel it soon enough. The fisherman by the river finally lifts his head slightly. He does not stand. He does not speak. He simply sits with a quiet awareness that the night is nearly complete. The river beside him continues its endless motion, unchanged by the passing hours. And above the Nile Valley, the final moments of darkness begin to loosen their hold, as the world waits in calm silence for the first true light of dawn. The night does not end suddenly. It fades. Slowly, gently, almost without asking permission. Across the Nile Valley, darkness begins to soften in a way that is felt more than seen. The sky does not turn bright yet. It only loses some of its depth, as if something far away has begun to open a quiet door. The stars are still there, but they seem thinner now. Less sharp. More distant. The river reflects this change in the smallest way, carrying a faint, pale suggestion along its surface. Not light exactly. Not color. Just a sense that the world is turning towards something new. In the village, sleep is still present, but it is no longer as deep as before. People begin to move more often beneath their blankets. Not waking fully, only drifting closer to awareness. The body senses what the mind has not yet accepted. Morning is near. Inside the homes, the air is cool and still. A child shifts and curls closer to warmth. A parent exhales slowly, turning slightly on the woven mat. An elder opens their eyes for a brief moment, then closes them again, listening without thought to the silence of the room. There is no rush. Even waking has its own patience here. Outside, the paths between homes are still empty. But the village no longer feels completely asleep. It feels paused. Held gently between night and morning. At the riverbank, the fisherman who has spent the night sitting beside his boat finally moves again. Not in haste. Just a slow return to awareness. He looks toward the water. The Nile is darker now, but the surface carries a faint shimmer that was not there before. A subtle difference. The kind that only becomes noticeable after many hours of watching. He presses a hand against the cool earth and begins to stand. His movements are unhurried, shaped by long familiarity with this hour of the day. Around him, the reeds remain still. The air is quiet. Even the sound of water feels softer, as if the river itself is resting in preparation for what comes next. Farther inland, the watchman completes his final round. His lantern is now little more than a weak glow, barely enough to outline his hand as he holds it close. He pauses at the granary doors one last time. Everything remains secure. Everything remains unchanged. He knows this without needing to check further. The night has done its work. He turns slowly toward the village, sensing the same subtle shift in the air that others are beginning to feel. Behind him, the storage buildings stand in calm silence, holding the harvest of many hands. Above, the sky continues to lighten at its edge. Still not sunrise. But no longer true night. The transition grows more certain with every passing moment. In the homes, more people begin to stir. This time, closer to waking. A baker rises fully and steps quietly toward his tools. A farmer sits up and listens to the faint world outside. A water carrier reaches for an empty jar placed beside the sleeping area. These movements remain quiet, careful not to disturb others still resting. Morning in this land is not loud. It unfolds like breath returning to the body. Across the village, the rooftops begin to show the faintest difference in color. The deep darkness of night gives way to a muted gray-blue that spreads slowly across the sky. The stars are still present, but they now feel like they belong to a fading memory rather than the center of the sky. The Nile reflects this transformation in long, smooth lines. Its surface is calmer than before, as if it too recognizes the shift from rest to renewal. Along its banks, the fisherman now stands beside his boat. He pulls it gently toward the water's edge, preparing for the day without urgency. His hands are steady. His movements are familiar. This is not the beginning of work yet. Only preparation. The village behind him begins to show small signs of life. A door opens quietly. A thin stream of smoke rises from a distant home where the first fire of the morning has been lit. Somewhere, a clay pot is filled with water. Somewhere else, bread dough is being kneaded once again, soft and warm beneath careful hands. These are the first threads of the day returning to the world. The watchman now walks without his lantern. The flame has been extinguished. He carries the empty vessel in his hand, its weight now insignificant. His duty for the night is complete. He moves toward home, passing slowly through streets that are beginning to awaken. He sees people stepping out of their homes, stretching lightly, adjusting clothing, preparing for another ordinary day. No words are exchanged yet. Only quiet acknowledgement in passing. Above everything, the sky continues its transformation. The deepest blue of night has now thinned into a soft, cool shade that stretches across the horizon. The eastern edge holds the promise of light, though the sun itself has not yet appeared. The valley feels suspended in this gentle moment. Neither fully night, nor fully day. Just the breath between them. The river flows steadily through it all, unchanged and patient. And the village, still half asleep, begins its slow return to life, one quiet movement at a time, as the ancient land of Egypt prepares once again for the soft arrival of morning. The first true light of dawn does not arrive in a single moment. It spreads. Slowly at first, like a soft glow gathering behind the horizon, then a little wider, a little brighter, until the entire eastern edge of the sky begins to breathe with color. Pale gold touches the tops of palm trees. A faint warmth returns to the air, replacing the cool stillness of night. The Nile reflects this change with quiet grace, its surface shifting from dark silver into soft shades of blue and light amber where the sky begins to awaken. The village responds gently. Not with noise. Not with rush. but with movement that feels natural, as if every part of life remembers its place without being told. Doors open slowly. Smoke rises more steadily now from early cooking fires. The smell of fresh bread begins to return to the air, mixing with the familiar scent of river water and damp earth. Inside the homes, sleep is finally giving way to waking. People sit up in silence at first, adjusting to the return of light through small openings in the walls or roofs. The darkness inside rooms is no longer complete. It is thinning, just like the night above. A child blinks slowly, still heavy with sleep. A mother gathers linen cloth and folds it carefully before placing it aside. A father reaches for tools that will soon be needed for the fields. Everything happens without hurry. Morning here is not a sudden beginning. It is a continuation of life, flowing from night into day as smoothly as the river itself. Outside, the paths between homes grow slowly more active. A few figures move toward the river carrying empty jars. Others walk toward storage spaces or small cooking fires. The first greetings of the day are quiet and simple. A nod. A soft word. A brief pause beside a neighbor before continuing on. The fisherman by the Nile is already working. He has pushed his boat into the water just as the light began to rise. Now he stands at the edge of it, guiding it forward with steady hands. The river feels different in the morning. Not changed. Just revealed. The surface shows clearer movement now, small ripples catching early sunlight as it stretches across the valley. He steps into the boat and adjusts his net carefully. This is a familiar beginning. He does not think about it deeply. His body knows what to do. Farther inland, the baker's ovens are already warm. The clay walls hold the heat from early fires, and fresh dough has been shaped and placed inside. Slowly, bread begins to rise again. The scent spreads through narrow streets, reaching homes where people are just beginning their day. Children follow the smell before they even fully understand why. In one household, a young girl is sent to collect fresh bread. She carries a small woven basket, walking carefully along paths that are now fully awake. The village feels different in daylight. Not louder. Just more complete. Shadows shorten as the sun continues its rise. Light becomes stronger, more direct, filling open spaces between buildings and stretching across the fields beyond. Farmers begin moving toward their work again. Tools are lifted. Animals are guided from resting places. Water jars are filled once more from the river. The rhythm of the day begins to settle into place. But even as activity grows, there is still a softness in the air. The memory of night has not fully disappeared. It lingers in the coolness of the morning breeze, in the calm way people begin their tasks, in the steady pace of life that does not rush even as the sun climbs higher. Along the riverbank, the fisherman casts his net into the water. It spreads wide for a moment before sinking beneath the surface. He waits. Not impatiently. Just present. Nearby, other boats begin to appear, each guided by hands that know the river well. The Nile becomes gently active again, filled with quiet movement that mirrors the village on its banks. On shore, the watchman finally reaches his home. He sits down for a moment before entering, letting the morning air rest on his face. His night is complete. The day of others has begun. Above the valley, the sun continues its slow ascent. Light now fills the entire sky, soft but certain. The stars are gone completely, leaving only the wide openness of morning. The Nile Valley is fully awake once again. Fields, homes, river, and sky all return to the familiar rhythm of another ordinary day in ancient Egypt, where life continues quietly, steadily, and without end, beneath the same patient sun that rises each morning over the ancient land. Morning has now fully settled across the Nile Valley. The light is no longer soft in the way it was at first dawn. It has grown steady and clear, filling every open space between homes, fields, and riverbanks. The land feels fully awake now, yet still calm in its rhythm, as if it has not forgotten the quiet of the night. The Nile moves through this brightness as it always does. Unchanged. Patient. Endless. Its surface now reflects a higher sun, creating a gentle shimmer that stretches across the water in slow, shifting patterns. Small ripples appear where boats pass, where reeds bend, where fish move unseen beneath the surface. Along its edges, life continues to expand into the day. The fisherman works with quiet focus. His net rises and falls in a steady rhythm. Each throw into the water is familiar, shaped by years of repetition. There is no need to think deeply about it anymore. The motion lives in his hands, in his arms, in the way he stands at the edge of the boat as it gently rocks with the river's current. When he pulls the net back in, it carries weight. Not always the same. Some mornings are generous. Some are not. But the river is never something to argue with. It is simply accepted, as it has always been. On the shore, more boats begin to gather. Men speak softly to one another, exchanging brief words about the current, the weather, the movement of fish beneath the water. Their voices are low, almost blending with the sound of the river itself. Further inland, the village is fully active now. Farmers are deep in their morning work. Fields stretch wide under the growing sun, their green crops moving slightly with the breeze. The soil, dark and rich from the Nile's blessing, holds the memory of water even as it begins to dry under the heat of the day. Workers move between rows in long, steady lines. Some loosen the earth. Some guide simple tools pulled by animals. Some carry baskets filled with harvested plants. Each task is part of a larger rhythm that no single person controls, yet everyone understands. Nearby, women tend small garden plots close to their homes. They pull herbs from the soil. They check the growth of vegetables. They carry water in clay jars and pour it carefully at the base of each plant. Even this work feels unhurried. Water is not wasted. Movement is always deliberate. Inside the village, workshops have opened again. The potter sits at his wheel, hands damp with clay, shaping vessels that will later hold grain, water, or oil. Each form rises slowly from the spinning surface, guided by gentle pressure from his fingers. The carpenter works nearby, selecting wood with careful attention. He listens to its grain as if it speaks in quiet lines. A simple bench takes shape beneath his tools. Nothing here is rushed. Everything depends on patience. In another corner of the village, scribes sit in shaded rooms where the light is filtered through small openings in the walls. Their reed pens move steadily across papyrus sheets. Records of grain. Lists of goods. Notes of exchange between households and storage houses. Their work does not carry the weight of physical labor, but it demands the same quiet focus. Outside, children move freely through narrow paths. Some carry small tasks given by their families. Others simply follow the rhythm of the village, watching, learning, observing the world as it unfolds around them. A group gathers near the edge of a shaded courtyard, shaping clay into small figures. Another group runs briefly along the path before slowing again, drawn back by the heat of the rising sun. Even play follows the pattern of the day. Energy in the morning. Rest in the heat. Movement returning again in the evening. As the sun climbs higher, the village begins to adjust once more. Work continues, but with awareness of the growing warmth. People seek shade where they can. Tasks move closer to walls, trees, or covered spaces. The midday hours are not feared. They are simply understood. A part of life that asks for a slower pace. Near the river, women gather to wash linen again, dipping cloth into cool water and beating it gently against smooth stones. The river absorbs the movement without resistance, continuing its flow as it always does. The sound is soft. Water. Cloth. Stone. A rhythm repeated across generations. Farther out, boats return briefly to shore to unload their catch. Fish are sorted quickly and placed into baskets lined with reeds. Some will be sold. Some will be cooked later in the day. Nothing is kept longer than necessary without purpose. Even goods move with the flow of life. The village, now fully awake, feels balanced between activity and calm. There is work everywhere. But there is also acceptance in that work. No one seems to fight the day. They move with it. As the sun rises higher still, its light becomes stronger, and shadows shorten beneath it. The river continues to shine, the fields continue to grow, and the people continue their steady tasks, each life woven quietly into the larger rhythm of the Nile Valley. And beneath the same ancient sky, another ordinary day in Egypt continues forward, steady and unbroken, as it has for countless generations. The sun now stands higher above the Nile Valley, and the morning has fully matured into the steady warmth of day. Light is no longer gentle. It is clear and firm, spreading across the land in wide sheets that touch rooftops, fields, and the long ribbon of river below. The air begins to warm, not suddenly, but gradually, as if the earth itself is remembering the heat it knows so well. The village continues its work in this light. Not quickly. Not slowly. But steadily, in the way it always has. Along the riverbanks, fishermen continue their rhythm. Nets rise from the water, dripping with silver flashes of movement. Some catches are small, some are enough, and some mornings require patience that stretches longer than expected. Yet there is no urgency in their disappointment or their success. The river is not judged. It is simply lived with. Boats shift gently against the current as men prepare for another cast. The water carries a calm strength beneath them, moving without hesitation, as it has for all memory. Farther inland, the fields are now fully active. Farmers move between rows of crops that stand greener under the higher sun. The soil, still rich from the Nile's presence, holds moisture deeper within even as the surface begins to dry under the heat. Tools press into the earth with practiced motion. Oxen walk in slow, heavy steps, pulling wooden plows that leave clean lines behind them. Workers bend and rise in steady cycles. Each movement is repeated countless times, forming a rhythm that belongs more to the land than to any single person. There is little need for speech in the fields. A glance is enough. A shared understanding is enough. Even silence feels like cooperation. In the village, workshops continue their quiet production. The potter shapes another vessel, his hands coated in fine clay dust. Each jar takes its form slowly, rising from a spinning wheel like something emerging from memory rather than effort. Once formed, it is set aside carefully to dry, joining many others that will later hold grain, water, or oil. Nearby, the carpenter smooths wood that carries the scent of fresh-cut grain. He checks each edge with his hand, ensuring it is balanced, steady, and useful. The tools he uses are simple, yet they have shaped homes, furniture, and boats for generations. Nothing here is decorative in excess. Everything is meant for use. Everything has purpose. In shaded corners of the village, scribes continue their work. The sound of reed pens moving across papyrus is soft, almost like wind passing through dry grass. Each mark they make holds meaning, records of storage, lists of trade, careful notes of what the village has gathered or exchanged. Their work ensures order in a world that depends on balance. Outside, the children of the village move between moments of work and play. Some carry small containers of water along narrow paths, careful not to spill a drop. Others help in gardens, pulling weeds, or gathering herbs under the watch of older family members. When their tasks are finished, they return briefly to play, running between shaded walls, shaping mud, or watching insects move across warm stones. Even childhood follows the rhythm of the day. Energy in the morning. Rest in the heat. Movement again when the day softens. As midday approaches, the heat grows stronger. The sun stands high and steady, and the land responds by slowing its pace slightly. Work does not stop, but it becomes more deliberate. Movements are less hurried. People instinctively seek shade wherever it can be found. Under trees, beside walls, beneath woven coverings stretched between posts, life continues at a gentler speed. A farmer pauses beneath a palm, wiping sweat from his brow before drinking from a clay jar of cool water. The taste is simple, but it brings relief. Nearby, a group of workers rests briefly in the shadow of a stone wall. They speak quietly about the field, about the river, about the tasks that will continue when the heat softens again. Their voices are low, unforced. There is no need to rush conversation. Time stretches evenly here. Along the river, the water reflects the height of the sun in bright, shifting patterns. The surface glimmers, not in harsh brightness, but in steady light that moves with the current. Fishermen now take longer pauses between casts. Some rest on the edges of their boats, letting the river carry small ripples against the hull. Others mend nets or simply watch the water without thought. The Nile never stops moving, yet it always allows moments of stillness beside it. In the village, food is prepared again for midday meals. Bread, still warm from morning baking, is shared with vegetables, lentils, and small portions of fish or grain-based dishes. The act of eating is unhurried, often done in the shade of homes or trees. Families gather together for these moments. Not formally. Just naturally. Children sit close to parents. Elders observe quietly. Conversations drift in and out like the breeze. When the meal ends, rest follows. Some lie down briefly inside cooler rooms. Others sit quietly in shaded courtyards, letting the body settle before the afternoon returns. The village does not resist the heat. It adjusts to it. It lives with it. As the sun continues its path across the sky, the rhythm of the day remains steady and familiar. Work continues where it can. Rest is taken where it is needed. And the Nile flows beside it all, unchanged and patient, carrying the life of the valley forward through another ordinary stretch of time beneath the ancient sun. The afternoon settles in with a heavier warmth. The sun is no longer just high. It feels fixed in the sky, holding its place as the land beneath it moves more slowly. The light spreads across the Nile Valley in a steady brightness that touches everything at once: fields, rooftops, riverbanks, and the quiet edges of the desert beyond. In this part of the day, the world does not change much. It simply continues. The village, now past the busiest hours of morning, enters a calmer rhythm. Work still exists, but it is gentler, shaped by the heat and the need for shade. People move with less urgency, their steps measured, their actions familiar enough that they require little thought. In the fields, farmers pause more often beneath palm trees or simple cloth coverings stretched between wooden posts. The earth is still worked, but in smaller sections, with breaks woven naturally into the flow of labor. The soil is warm now, dry on the surface but still holding memory of the river beneath. A man leans on his hoe for a moment, looking across the long rows of crops. Everything appears still in the distance, though small movements continue everywhere: hands, tools, animals, wind passing through grain. He drinks slowly from a clay jar. Then returns to work. Nearby, oxen stand in partial shade, breathing steadily. Their work slows in this part of the day, guided more by patience than force. The people who tend them adjust their pace accordingly, understanding that the animals, like the people, move best when the heat is not pressing too strongly. Along the river, the water remains active in its own quiet way. It reflects the sky in a softened shimmer, where light and movement blend together. Boats drift closer to shore during the hottest hours, tied securely to reeds or wooden posts. Nets are hung to dry in shaded areas, their woven patterns casting thin shadows on the ground. A fisherman sits beside his boat, repairing a section of net with careful fingers. The work is small, repetitive, and steady. Each knot is tied with attention. Each repair extends the life of something that must last many seasons. There is no rush to finish. Only the quiet satisfaction of maintaining what is already known and trusted. In the village itself, the narrow paths between homes grow quieter during the hottest part of the afternoon. Doors remain open, allowing air to move through shaded rooms. Inside, the temperature is slightly cooler, protected by thick mud brick walls that hold back much of the heat. People rest in these spaces. Some sleep lightly. Others simply sit in stillness, listening to the distant sounds of the village softened by distance and heat. A mother sits beside a low table, mending linen clothing with slow, practiced stitches. The fabric is worn in places, softened by years of use. Each repair is careful, not because it must be perfect, but because nothing is wasted when life is built on balance. A child lies nearby, half asleep, watching the gentle movement of her hands before drifting fully into rest. In another home, a pot of food simmers slowly over a small flame. The cooking is unhurried. Ingredients soften together over time: lentils, herbs, grains, creating a simple meal that will be shared later in the afternoon or early evening. Even fire feels calmer in this part of the day. It burns low, steady, without urgency. In shaded courtyards, groups of workers sit together briefly, resting before returning to their tasks. Conversations are minimal. Sometimes there are no words at all. The comfort comes from shared silence, from the knowledge that everyone is experiencing the same heat, the same pause in movement. The village does not stop. But it breathes more slowly. Above it all, the sky remains wide and pale, the sun unwavering in its path. Heat rises gently from the ground, creating faint waves in the air that blur distant shapes along the horizon. Far beyond the fields, the desert holds its own stillness. The sand glows softly under the intense light, appearing almost motionless, though the wind continues to shape it in ways too slow to notice in a single day. The Nile continues its flow through everything. It does not slow with the heat. It does not change with the hour. It moves as it always has, bringing life to fields, cooling the edges of the land, and holding the village in its long, continuous rhythm. By late afternoon, small signs of change begin to appear again. Shadows slowly lengthen. The brightness of the sun softens just slightly. Birds become more active near the riverbanks. People begin to think again of evening tasks, returning from fields, gathering water, preparing meals, finishing small repairs. The energy of the day does not return fully yet, but it begins to stir again in quiet ways. A farmer stands upright in his field, stretching after hours of bending work. A potter covers drying vessels to protect them from dust. A scribe finishes a final line before setting down his reed pen. Each action signals the gradual shift toward evening. Not an ending, just a turning. The village, still wrapped in warm light, continues its steady rhythm as the long afternoon slowly begins to move toward the softer hours that will follow, carried forward once again by the timeless flow of the Nile and the quiet endurance of life along its banks. The sun begins its slow descent toward the western edge of the Nile Valley. It does not fall quickly. It lowers itself with the same calm patience that has guided every hour of the day before it. The light grows softer, stretching longer across the fields, touching the river in warm reflections that ripple gently with the current. The village feels this change before it is fully seen. Work begins to slow. Not because it is finished, but because the day itself is shifting into its final rhythm. Farmers gather their tools and begin walking back along the same paths they followed in the morning. Their steps are steady, unhurried, carrying the weight of a full day that now rests quietly in their bodies. Dust clings to their sandals, to their clothing, to their hands that have spent hours shaping the earth. But there is no complaint in their movement. Only acceptance. The river beside them continues flowing as it always has, carrying the reflection of the fading sky. Boats return to shore. Nets are folded. Simple catches of the day are placed into baskets lined with reeds. The fishermen move with the same quiet rhythm as the water itself, as if they are part of it rather than separate from it. In the village, smoke begins to rise once again from cooking fires. Evening meals are prepared slowly. Bread is broken and shared. Lentils simmer in clay pots. Small portions of fish, vegetables, and grain are arranged for families gathering together after hours apart. The air fills with familiar scents. Warm food. Burning wood. River wind passing through palm leaves. Children return from play or small tasks, their energy softened by the long day. They sit close to their families, their voices quieter now, as if even sound itself is resting. Elders sit near doorways, watching the sky change color. They have seen this moment countless times. And yet it never feels exactly the same. There is always a quiet stillness that arrives with evening, as if the world pauses for just a little while to remember itself. The sky deepens. Gold turns to orange. Orange fades into soft red along the horizon. Then slowly, everything becomes calmer as the first stars begin to appear once again above the valley. The Nile reflects this transformation with gentle grace. The water holds the colors of the sunset for a few brief moments before they fade into dusk. It continues its journey without hesitation, without beginning or end, carrying the same rhythm it carried in the morning and will carry again tomorrow. One by one, the village grows quieter. Tools are placed aside. Doors are closed. Roofs become places of rest once more as the heat of the day releases into the cooling air. Oil lamps begin to glow inside homes, small and steady, casting soft light against mud brick walls. Families gather close together, sharing the final moments of wakefulness before sleep returns. Outside, the desert becomes a dark silhouette beyond the fields. The river remains a ribbon of quiet movement beneath the night sky. The stars return fully, spreading across the heavens as they always have, unchanged and patient, watching over the land that turns beneath them in endless cycles. And so the day ends in the same way it began. Not with sudden change, but with quiet transition. With breath slowing. With light fading. with life settling gently into rest. The people of ancient Egypt sleep again beside the Nile, as they have for generations beyond memory, their lives shaped by water, sun, soil, and sky. And the river continues onward through the darkness, carrying time itself in its steady flow, through night, through morning, and into the next quiet beginning that will come without hurry, without announcement, and without end.